Welcome back to Property Unlocked. It's October, which means the Labor's 5% deposit scheme is now in full effect. So here's a quick recap of what that scheme means for you. First of all, you can now buy your first home with just a 5% deposit. The government guarantees the other 15%, which means you don't have to pay any lender's mortgage insurance. Now, there are price caps for every individual city. For example, if you want to use the scheme in Melbourne, you can't be buying a property for more than $950,000. For Brisbane, it's $850,000, and same for Perth, $850,000, Adelaide, it's $900,000, and Sydney, $1.5 million. There is no limit on how many people will actually access this scheme, and there are no income caps either. So you will see high income earners taking advantage of this scheme. Now, while any suburb with a median house price under the cap, you're going to see the most amount of competition at the upper end of the price cap. So Melbourne, that would be $950,000. And this is because naturally people want to live in the best suburb possible for their budget. And if your budget is $950,000 in line with the price cap for Melbourne, then you're going to see the most competition in those $950K suburbs. So today I will be exploring the number one suburb that I believe will see the most amount of capital growth in Melbourne, Brisbane, and Perth. So let's begin with my hometown of Melbourne. With Melbourne's price cap of $950,000, I would be targeting the suburb of Glenroy, specifically south of Hilton Street, and as close to Pascoe as possible. Pascoe is a $1 million suburb. So south of Glenroy gets you right next to this premium area, which naturally is going to give you the best capital growth. And that is due to what we call the ripple effect. So what does $950,000 or a little bit less get you in Glenroy? Well, you're looking at an established brick house in livable condition on a nice big developable block of land around 600 square meters. Now let's dive into the investor metrics for Glenroy. In Glenroy, you have 28% renter demographic, the rest being owner-occupied. This is a very good ratio. Houses are selling in just 30 days, very quick. That is great momentum. And you have a vacancy rate of 0.8%, which is very attractive to investors. It means you're renting out your property quite quickly if you were to ever turn this home into an investment. I also want to mention that prices in Glenroy and most of Melbourne as a whole bottomed last year, December. So if you're buying now, you're getting in at the beginning of the upswing. So although this buyer scheme is for home buyers, if you do have that investment lens, then I believe you're buying at the right time. Here is an example of a property that recently sold in Glenroy, as you can see, under $950,000, brick house, solid block of land. Now let's fly over to Brisbane, and with a price cap of $850,000, I would be buying in the suburb of Kalinga. Kalinga is 25 kilometres north of Brisbane CBD. As the crow flies, obviously driving, it's a lot further. And to buy a house within that $850,000 budget, you're looking at a neat and tidy brick house on a block of land a bit smaller than what you'd get. In Kalinga, you have a renter demographic. Around 40% of houses in Kalinga are rented, which is a much higher renter demographic compared to Glenroy in Melbourne. And it's taking houses slightly longer to sell in Kalinga. So these metrics sort of point towards the market cooling off. And I do remember buying houses here a few years ago for under $650,000. So from my perspective as an investor, I would say Kalinga has had its run. And the metrics are foreshadowing a cooling off of the market. But the key benefit is pretty simple. The suburb allows you to get into Brisbane with a budget of $850K or less. Here's an example of a property that just sold in Kalinga for this budget, 35 Leslie Street, 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom, nice brick home on 600 square meters. So it's not a development site, but it's a neat and tidy home. It's more of a set and forget type asset. Now let's head back to the West Coast and let's touch on Perth. So again, Perth has a price cap, same as Brisbane, $850,000. And with that budget, I'd be targeting the suburb of Clarkson. Clarkson is about 34 kilometres north of Perth CBD, and the locals rate the northern corridor higher. It's considered more premium with quote-unquote better beaches. In Clarkson, you're only 2 kilometres away from Minderoo Beach and of course the marina there. So it's also beautiful for a nice lifestyle change. This makes the suburb more attractive for that coastal living. Now, with a budget of $850,000, in Clarkson, you're buying a nice 4-bedroom home on a block of land around 400 square metres. That might sound on the smaller side, but it's pretty normal for Perth. And despite Perth really booming over the past 5 years, I mean, prices in Clarkson have pretty much doubled in 5 years. But with that being said, we are seeing a second wind of growth in Perth. Let's dive into the investor metrics for Clarkson. 31% of households are rented. This is nice and healthy. Houses are selling in just 27 days. That is quicker than Glenroy. And if you switch this property into an investment in, the short term, you could be achieving a rental yield of closer to 4.5%. This is really attractive if you're comparing it to Glenroy or Kalinga, that will both yield just shy of 4%. And the vacancy rate in Clarkson also beats Glenroy and Kalinga at just 0.5%. So clearly a very tight rental market in Clarkson and Perth as a whole. So Clarkson is in a market that is seeing a second wind of growth. You're not buying at the beginning of a growth cycle, but you still will see that momentum. Plus, you're getting an asset that's lower maintenance, higher yielding, that's attractive to investors, and you have the lifestyle factor being in close proximity to the beach. So now let's wrap up these findings. If you are based in Melbourne and you've been sitting on the sidelines and you're thinking about using this scheme to buy a property, I do believe it's the best time to enter Melbourne's market. Use the 5% scheme. Get into a suburb like Glenroy or a surrounding suburb like Hadfield or Fawkner. Here you can buy that property for well under $950,000, and it's also a good investment. You're buying at the right time and you're buying a development site. In fact, if you can live in this property and renovate it, add value that way, that's also a big bonus. So this 5% deposit scheme has come at the perfect time if you are in Melbourne and looking to buy a home. Now for the Brisbane market, we can agree that Brisbane has become somewhat unaffordable, and this price cap probably does not do the city justice. But with that being said, if you want to get into the Brisbane market and buy yourself a home for under $850,000, Kalinga is definitely the suburb I'd be looking at. If not, look at the surrounding suburbs. I mean, Petrie is definitely superior to Kalinga. If you can buy a house in Petrie for $850K or less, definitely consider that. But of course, Kalinga still gets you into the market. And now for Perth. If you're looking to buy a home, this cap will get you into the northern beaches. It'll get you a nice, neat and tidy home and a property that is prime for a future investment. So live in it for a few years, then rent it out, get that higher rental yield, and have a property that will sit nicely in your portfolio. So to compare those three cities, I do believe this scheme will have the biggest and best effect on Melbourne. I would say Perth second and then Brisbane third. If you'd like me to touch on other cities around Australia, including Sydney and Adelaide, I can definitely do that in a separate video. And if you're looking to use the 5% deposit scheme in your city, comment down below the suburbs that you are targeting and I'll give you my raw opinion on those suburbs. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe to Property Unlocked. Here we share everything you need to know about property investment, where and what to buy. So subscribe now and don't miss out on future videos.